Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Kershlen from DHK Architects. I'm an associate and the BIM lead of the practice. We have a team of about 7 BIM managers, BIM coordinators, and myself. And it's grown quite quickly over the last, I'd say, 2.5 years. I think very organically, but very noticeably. And I think what that's helped, I think, DHK do is become quite a powerhouse and quite strong in the digital delivery side of architecture, which is something I think was a goal they set out to achieve quite a few years back. So I'm just going to briefly go through a bit of a case study, and I think the main idea behind what I'm trying to present, and I think it's going to follow on a bit from what Amanda presented and then what Jacques presented, is understanding from now an architectural perspective how we have been on the receiving end of these projects, how we communicate with developers, how the processes that developers and clients have within their organizations affect us, and how we can make an impact as professionals in the industry to help them operate and run projects a little bit more successfully, I think. So just gonna start off a little bit about DHK Architects. I'm not sure, does everyone know who DHK is? It's in a practice been established in 1998. There's about 130, now this presentation was made a few weeks ago, but just ticked over to about 140 now, people in office between the 2 branches, which is Cape Town and Johannesburg. Very large practice with a quite a strong focus on digital delivery, on sort of forward-thinking construction practices. I think the main thing we've really focused in on lately is understanding our internal processes and our clients' processes. We've gotten past, I think, the phase of, fine, we're architects, appoint us, we can build you a building. I think we're at the point now where we have so much more to offer to our clients, and our clients have so much more to offer to us. So that's more or less what I want to get into. Just a little bit about myself and what I've sort of worked on in the past. Again, key term, I think digital delivery is really, from Amanda, the sort of main thing we should be reframing BIM as going forward. I think BIM has always been very specific about models or information or something to do with a process, but not necessarily talking about the business process. And I think the business process and how we operate digitally is the key term. And I think digital delivery abroad has really been coined as I'd say the lingo for BIM. I think BIM as a whole isn't really mentioned or spoken about, especially in the environments we are working in right now. So I'm going to get a bit into that now. I'm not really going to go through all of this, but the presentation today, I'm really going to focus in a bit on the facility side and understanding assets and asset management and goals that clients and developers have within our sphere and who we work with. Just looking at a case study, or actually 2 case studies. The first case study I'm going to be showing you today is going to be one that is in Cape Town for a client I'm pretty sure everyone knows, so the V&A Waterfront. This is the project we call internally 5 Dock Road. It's actually just the street address. But it stuck and we didn't really give the building a name, so that's what the building is now called, 5 Dock Road. It's about approximately a 30,000 square development, sort of in the heart of Battery Park in Cape Town. The interesting thing on this is this project actually started off in 2017 with us, which is quite a long time ago if you think about sort of viability and stuff like that. It started off as part of the greater Battery Park precinct. So I'm just going to talk about more or less the precinct. So this entire precinct was considered the Battery Park precinct for the V&A. It's sort of the entryway into the V&A. It's directly sort of attached to the N1 and other main routes around Cape Town. It's very prominent and sort of the gateway into their world. So it's quite important for them to make an impact and for them to sort of have something that stood out, but also respected the heritage and respected the surroundings, etc., etc. So what we're talking about is the building right in front here. that is considered 5 Dock Road. So I'm just going to flip through. I haven't put too much text up on screen, so I'm going to speak about what sort of transpired in this project and why I think it's important. We were approached by the VNA a few years back, once this project really kicked off, to incorporate what they had considered an EIR into this project. So this came quite late into the stage, and we considered that employers' information requirements or exchange information requirements. And what that presented to me especially was our client had the right intentions. And as a developer, I think they had the right intentions in terms of moving forward with incorporating better digital processes. What we found, though, however, was that the processes that they had thought they had developed wasn't really aligned with what we were doing in practice. And they hadn't got into the detail of, within their organization, communicating with the right departments, finance, facilities, assets, and various other aspects of their business to really draw all that information into the EIR. So we ended up with a set of requirements that we needed to achieve that weren't really achievable. Or if we did achieve them, weren't going to give them any value. So what we did is we worked on aligning their process to the then published SANS 19650, but it was originally the ISO 19650 process. And the reason I use it as a case study today is because we've subsequently also done a project in the Middle East, which is what I'm going to get into now, which is called Al Marjan. This project is a 250,000 square project, 6 towers, large podium on an island in the Ras Al Khaimah. It was quite an intimidating project and quite a stressful one, I must say, in terms of the delivery standards that we needed to achieve. Also touching on Jacques' point around time is that this project started off being, we were involved from the concept stage. We had originally planned a 16-month program to sort of finish off what we would consider stage 4.2, essentially going to council. And if you think about 250,000 squares over that period, you sort of start looking at where can we gain efficiencies. And this project was really a blessing for us because what it showed us was that the Middle East has been operating in this environment for such a long time, especially a client like Elda. And what they had developed was a lot of systems and protocols that were aligned with ISO 19650 and did meet the requirements of what we consider digital delivery. Their processes aligned with our understanding and our skills really helped us sort of streamline this entire process. And I think it's a great case study to bring to South Africa and apply. So what we did a couple of years back was these projects weirdly had similar sort of start dates for, I'd say, stage 3. So we were roughly in stage 3 at the same time on both these projects, and running them side by side, my team and I sort of streamlined the best case workflows for both. And we noticed while doing so, all the gaps that the South African market sort of had. And I know speaking about one client in the South African market might seem a bit premature, but I think as a generalization, it's a good one to make. We, as I think an industry in South Africa, haven't really progressed as fast as we should have or could have. And I think we can do a lot as professionals to help move this forward faster. So the next thing I'm going to sort of talk about is, this is just sort of looking at the design, some renders. This project's on site now, piles are in, so it is moving. The Dock Road project, just briefly touching on it, is, I think, we're 3 months away from completion. So practical completion is almost there. So the next thing I want to talk about is just a very, very light gap analysis. And I like doing gap analysis sort of sessions with my team for the fact that when you sit down and you look at a project, you kind of have in your mind what sort of the best way to approach that project is. What's the process I need to put in place to get the best outcomes? And I've simplified it down, but what we've seen is taking, which was great that it got published, but taking SANS 19650 and saying, okay, we want to apply it to South African conditions. I don't think there has been anything published yet that directly correlates stages 1 to 6 and SANS 19650. Nothing speaks to each other. So how do you find stage alignment? How do you know when to run which process? How do you know what process is applicable to what stage specifically? And how do you explain that to a client? And how do you now amend an appointment letter or a fee that you previously had agreed for standard scope of services that the client really wants now a BIM service on this project or a digital delivery? You can amend, but also how do you charge for that? So that's sort of what I'm going to touch on. I like to break ISO down into three main categories, which is process, data management, and outcomes. And the most important one, I think, in those three things is process. Process really, really helps you understand what am I trying to achieve, how do I achieve it, and what's going to be the outcome. And data management sort of falls part of that. Just touching on the SANS 19650 again. If anyone's read the first few sections, it's all considered assessment and need. And assessment and need speaks to primarily developers, clients, and people who want to build buildings. But I haven't personally seen that adopted widespread across the majority of our South African clients. And I mean, we have over 80 active construction projects in South Africa right now. Maybe 2 of them have taken these processes on board before we have mentioned them. So my concern is that, yes, it's great that we meet in these conferences, and I think it's awesome that we really are pushing these agendas forward, but my concern is that we aren't necessarily aiming this information and these processes at the right people. So just let's dig into that a bit and understand it. So I'm not going to run through every table, but I've just done a quick sort of analysis between the two. So understanding under assessment and need in SANS 19650, there are many subcategories, of which in 2 columns I've got Dock Road and Almajan. Dock Road representing South Africa, Almajan representing the rest of the world. Just done a tick box exercise to show you what the client provided us. Assessment and need, remember, is the client's responsibility or representative of the client. What they provided us and what we in turn worked with our client to develop, because we had understood there was a gap. Certain things we overlooked because they weren't necessary for their process or their organization. Then moving on to the invitation and tender. And I know it's a bit confusing considering we already were appointed, but the main thing that our client missed here was that, cool, we've got an EIR, we've got all these great processes and protocols we want to run. Team, go ahead and do it. Okay, but then the team looked back, including myself, and said, okay, fine, where's our templates? Where's your internal processes? Where's your asset requirements? Where's your information requirements? How are you going to be digesting what we give you? Have you set up a CDE? Do you even know what a CDE is? Do you have an enterprise CDE like Aconex or other sort of CDEs? And I think that was a really key turning point for the client. They then acknowledged and understood, look, we as an organization really want to do this. We understand the benefits, we understand the cost savings, and we want to try it on this project, but we haven't enabled it properly for the team. So how do we do that? So that's sort of where our appointment lies as I'd say a BIM team. I've got 2 of my team members here today, but a lot of my team worked on this project, helping the client develop this slowly but surely. So again, moving on to the next stage, which is tender response. Just sort of understanding what the client didn't provide. And I think what's glaring so far is that our South African context, clients have the right intentions, but they're not supplying us with the right information to be able to enable these processes. Moving on to appointments and mobilization, this is where majority of the sort of framework documentation should be coming from a client, or feedback should be coming from a client. And we did a lot of this essentially. So our appointment on this project sort of shifted from being on one part appointed as the lead consultant and the architect in the project to a separate appointment being the BIM managers, I'd say, or digital delivery experts on this project. That was a really key sort of turning point for us. And understanding this with the VNA, what they then did was sort of creating this understanding with VNA, then enabled them to start helping us engage. So the reason I bring this project up and the reason I sort of want to talk about it is we started off at a point, let's just take a step back. Appointment as an architect, client had some goals and some ambitions. We supported that, we said we can do it for you. We understand the process and we started helping them through this process. I'd say if we fast track to about 10 to 12 months ago, the client finally opened their doors and let us into their organization to understand all aspects of their business. So allowed us to understand their assets sort of division. They have separate departments in separate locations in Cape Town that don't talk to each other and don't use the same internal enterprise systems. Finance use their own system. Assets use their own system. And the fact that these two things didn't speak to each other yet are directly linked and correlated with each other was really, I think it was concerning for us, especially when we received back asset registers. So we had requested from the VNA existing asset registers for the two projects we had completed. So if you remember back to that previous image, DHK had done the Battery Park Precinct and Waterway House, which is part of the larger precinct that is there. We requested the asset logs, I would say, or registers for those projects. And finance gave us one, and it had about 4,500 items. And assets, the asset division gave us one and had about 14,000 items. And then we looked at them, no, this doesn't seem right. Okay, so how does your finance division only register and recognize 4,500 assets as valued assets that either need dynamic maintenance or need scheduled maintenance or are just operationally significant in some way or form? We realized about 10, 12 months ago that there was a lot more work to be done with the VNA and a lot more work to be done with them in terms of getting them to a point where they can digest the information we were going to give them at the end of this project. We then went on to work with them further, developing their sort of schema on how they digest information. I would say, they kind of let us in, but they also kept us out a little bit, and I think that's the push and pull you're going to have to deal with as a professional in this environment. I'm pretty sure all of us have found that at some point in the project, as you're working on someone in the project wants to enable BIM services or scope that includes BIM services, and that's something else I'm going to talk to shortly. But what they fail to have realized is that by asking for those things or asking for these processes, there's a lot more that comes with asking for that. And what us as professionals need to understand, recognize, and preach is the same thing. We need to understand, okay, if a client or anyone asks for this scope to be included in their project, these are the processes that we need to implement, and these are the sort of stage-aligned timings for those processes. My goal for at least for this presentation today was to, first of all, go through two really interesting projects very briefly, but go through some of them, some of the shortcomings of both, and some of the positives of both, and help sort of, I think, describe the gap, which is, I know my topic was the case studies and understanding how BIM has been implemented in South Africa, but the big takeaway for me has always been, at least for the last 2 years, is that there's a gap. And I think, where's Jay? Jay's somewhere around here, around the back. Jay and I very recently had this discussion, I think with Warwick as well, about another developer and other clients we work with directly, speaking quite openly about the client's ambitions. Modena, for example, as a reseller, us as architects, we all have similar ambitions, we all have similar goals, but how are we working towards that in a positive fashion? How are we actually collaborating? How are we actually coming together and saying, okay, cool, I'm going to use an example. We want to run a digital delivery service on this project. Warwick says, cool, I can provide X, Y, and Z software. The developer says, I have no idea how to use that software. We say, okay, cool, go to Modena, get some training, learn how to use it. We understand how to use it. That kind of open communication lanes, it doesn't necessarily need to be Autodesk products, it doesn't necessarily need to be Modena. What I'm saying is that we need to have these open communication lanes and understand the lingo and understand how to educate the people we work with. I think understanding how to speak about or understanding how to run these processes is very important. Roy just gave me the 5 minutes hand over there.
It sucks, eh?
Yeah, I know it does, eh? It brings the pressure on, yeah. So, again, talking about case studies, what is the purpose of doing a case study? It's to understand the do's and don'ts, or what happened in the project, or were the successful parts of the project and what wasn't so successful. The main takeaway, I would say, from the projects we worked on, especially in the local climate or local context, is that we as an industry need to work towards mandating comprehensive legislation around BIM. And I think, Amanda, you're really working towards that at quite some pace, and I think in really good detail as well. I'm really keen to collaborate with you on that as well. But a second thing would be, and this is where I have done some diagrammatic work, but it's quite intense IP right now, but I will be releasing it hopefully soon, is stage aligning SANS 19650 with the standard SACAP stages, and having a gazetted fee structure for how we would charge for that. Because that's another question, is it's always been great that we charge by the hour, or we charge for value of work, or whatever, a percentage-based fee, whatever the fee is we've put out for BIM services in past, very seldomly is met with a smile by a developer. And it often is seen as extra cost. And I think Sharky did a great job with that, the curve we've always understood, which is really bulk up your effort up front, get things done early, early stage sort of engagement, asking questions early and interrogating a lot of your requirements as a developer or as an end user or client early really benefits the project in the long run. So these are the kind of things I want to work on. The next thing, which is something that I picked up and learned, and I think one of the guys in the audience here works with me, Sean, understands quite well, is stage-gated approvals in South Africa isn't a thing. Hands up for anyone who's run 2 work stages at a time concurrently. I think, yeah, there's a lot. A lot of clients feel sometimes that doing 2 things simultaneously gets you to your goal faster, and I completely understand that. But when it comes to stage gating, very strict and linear sort of deliverables, what you end up having is very clear snapshots in time of what information was produced, what quality was that information, did it meet the requirements or did it not meet the requirements, and you can very linearly build up your digital asset. That in turn helps the project, and it helps build up the digital asset for sort of use in future by facilities, by whatever it needs to be. I think I've spoken to all of these so far. Again, this is speaking just around the motivation. So I think a big driver for digital delivery and BIM in South Africa has been, I think it has been at least, facilities and asset management. And I think it coming from that end, I think my background is from a facilities background as well, although I'm an architect. That being the driver has been really important in getting us to the point we're at right now. And I think in 2025, everyone in this room sort of understands the process, understands the lingo, understands how these things work. One thing we're not necessarily doing is collectively speaking with a singular voice. Some things I might say might not be what Warwick says, for instance, or might not be what Jay says. And I think we recently had a chat about making sure that we're aligned. I think it's a massive step in the right direction, making sure that we all are promoting the same things, we're all working towards the same goal, because until that legislation comes, this is how we have to work, I think, at least. And then, yeah, sort of just exactly what I said just now, it's just pushing the early stage engagement. And I think that's about it from me. I will have no time for questions, but I'll go through a bit more in detail in the Q&A about any of the projects we worked on. Didn't really want to spend too much time on the projects here. I just wanted to spend some time on the processes and showing how we've worked through those processes. I'm going to hand off to a good friend, Thomas. So he just appeared out of nowhere. Thank you, everyone.